The second half of the 20th century was marked by the historical confrontation between the Soviet Union and the United States of America, known as the Cold War, which was not merely an ideological conflict but also a deep intelligence war where the use of illegal agents of the Committee for State Security played a crucial role. The doctrine of the Committee for State Security called for the deployment of deeply clandestine officers, infiltrated into target countries without any official ties to the Soviet Union, whose mission was to establish autonomous intelligence networks and gather strategic information, primarily concerning the defense industrial complex and military technical developments of the United States of America. One of the most significant examples of such operational work is the case of the illegal officer known by the operational pseudonym Rudolf Abel, whose real name was Vilyam Fisher, and whose profile was deemed ideal for such a critically important mission requiring exceptional psychological resilience, linguistic skills, and the ability to endure years of self-isolation. Vilyam Fisher, as a career officer of the Committee for State Security, possessed not only a high degree of professional training in cryptography and operational work, but also an innate capacity for assimilation, demonstrating impeccable discipline and composure, which were the cornerstones of his psychological profile as a candidate for the role of an illegal agent operating in the very heart of the enemy state. Vilyam Fisher's preparation for infiltration into the United States of America was a multifaceted and grueling process that spanned several years in specialized training centers of the Soviet Union, where he not only perfected his English to the level of complete accent eradication, but also mastered a craft that would serve as his deep cover, specifically the skills of a painter and photographer. Central to this training was the process of creating a fictitious biography, or legend, which had to withstand any, even the most thorough, inspection by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It was decided that Vilyam Fisher would operate under the name of a certain Rudolf Abel, supposedly born outside the Soviet Union and possessing a plausible history of migration and document acquisition, a history that was meticulously fabricated using real or compromised historical data to ensure maximum authenticity. He was inculcated not only with the habits, mannerisms, and cultural specifics of a resident of the United States of America, but also with an entirely new personality, including emotional responses and social preferences, in order to make him indistinguishable from local citizens, a process that required the officer to completely abandon his true Soviet identity for the duration of the operational work. The infiltration of Rudolf Abel into the United States of America was carried out in the year 1948, and his first steps were aimed at creating a reliable and, most importantly, boring and inconspicuous cover that would not attract any interest from counterintelligence. He established himself in New York, where he used his skills as an artist as a cover, renting a studio and integrating into the local artistic community, which allowed him to maintain non-obtrusive social contacts and explain the irregularity of his income and movements. The creation of a deep cover involved not only professional activity, but also the establishment of a full-fledged social and family facade, which was a critically important element of his protection. Thus, he entered into marriage, which served as a powerful psychological and social anchor, making him appear like a law-abiding and settled citizen. His legend was strengthened by work that gave him access to certain circles or information relevant to the defense industrial complex, for example, through photographic commissions or technical expertise, which allowed him to be legally present near objects of interest and establish contacts that could be used to build an intelligence network. The creation of a family, including having children, was the highest form of integration, as it created a history and obligations that, according to the calculations of the Committee for State Security, made his appearance in the eyes of the Federal Bureau of Investigation even more credible and less suspicious. The active operational activity of Rudolf Abel in the United States of America was focused on two main tasks: establishing and managing an intelligence network consisting of recruited agents or processed sources, and transmitting strategic information to the center in the Soviet Union. The typical information gathering cycle involved obtaining data on the latest military developments, especially in the field of nuclear technology and missile construction, as well as political and economic information that could be used to analyze the positions of the United States of America. Information extraction was often carried out using methods highly advanced for the time, including microphotography and the encryption of data into small, easily concealable containers. A complex system of dead drops, secret mailboxes located in inconspicuous places, such as cracks in walls, inside coins, or under specific stones in parks, was used for information transfer, access to which was strictly regulated and synchronized with other agents. Contact with other illegal officers or couriers was often made through brush contacts, fleeting encounters during which containers or coded signals were exchanged without any verbal communication, minimizing the risk of surveillance by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Integrated psychological assessment. The prolonged existence of Rudolf Abel under an assumed identity, which lasted nearly 10 years, led to a predictable yet difficult-to-control psychological conflict in which the boundaries between his true self, Vilyam Fisher, and his fictitious persona, Rudolf Abel, became dangerously blurred. Observations recorded in the reports of the Committee for State Security indicated that the years spent in the role of a loving husband and father created a genuine emotional attachment to his fabricated family, which, despite his professional training, began to feel authentic, contradicting his duty to the motherland and the necessity of being ready to abandon this life at any moment without regret. This internal conflict, an unavoidable professional risk for illegal agents, represented a critical point of vulnerability. His false life, conceived as operational protection, began to turn into a personal trap where duty demanded dispassionate detachment, yet human nature insisted on emotional investment in the reality he had created. The operational failure that ultimately drew the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to Rudolf Abel was not caused by a single major mistake, but rather by an accumulation of minor inconsistencies, and, more importantly, by betrayal. The critical attention of counterintelligence was turned to the agent after one of his alleged accomplices, a cipher officer of the Committee for State Security named Reino Heihanen, who defected to the United States of America, provided the Federal Bureau of Investigation with information about the existence of the network, and, crucially, pointed to the specific methods of communication and data transfer that Abel utilized. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, having received these valuable indications, began meticulously studying specific areas and objects in New York and Brooklyn, employing covert surveillance methods that included both physical tailing and electronic monitoring of his apartment and studio. In the year 1957, after Heihanen confirmed Abel's identity from a photograph, the Federal Bureau of Investigation obtained a warrant for his arrest, and Rudolf Abel was apprehended in a hotel room where he had stopped to conduct a routine encryption operation. Following the arrest and indictment of Rudolf Abel for espionage and conspiracy to transmit defense information to the Soviet Union, the Committee for State Security immediately activated the emergency evacuation protocol for other members of his network, although Abel himself did not receive the emergency evacuation signal and was forced to remain in the United States of America. During the trial and subsequent imprisonment, Vilyam Fisher, the agent's true name, demonstrated exceptional courage and professionalism, refusing to cooperate with the authorities of the United States of America and declining to reveal any operational secrets or the names of his associates, even under the threat of the death penalty, for which he earned the highest respect in the Soviet Union. His arrest and subsequent conviction to 30 years in prison despite the failure of the operation, were not the end of his story, as an historic agreement was reached between the Soviet Union and the United States of America in the year 1962 for his exchange for the American reconnaissance pilot Francis Gary Powers, who had been shot down over Soviet territory. The escape from the United States of America was logistically carried out as part of this exchange on the Glienicke Bridge in Germany. The historical consequences of this case were significant. It became a public symbol of the scope of the intelligence operations of the Committee for State Security on the territory of the United States of America, caused strategic damage through the loss of an intelligence network, and inflicted social damage upon his American family, who, unaware of the truth about his double life, suddenly discovered that their father and husband was a high-ranking Soviet spy, which became a severe blow to their public standing and personal lives. The case of Rudolf Abel became a precedent defining the counterintelligence methods of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and intensified the paranoia of the Cold War in American society for many years.